and it's whoops. Okay, let me repeat that for the sake of posterity. Today is the first day of the Omer. Last night it started, and so tonight is the second day of the Omer begins. And the Omer we count from 1 to 49. So it's from the second day of Passover all the way to Shavuot. And that you're not supposed to get married on the first 33 days of the Omer, first 32 days of the Omer, because of the plague that killed so many rabbis and rabbinic students in the first, second century CE. And that's why Julie's wedding was this past Sunday. Also, this coming Friday, we'll count the Omer. We'll also have a short recognition of that it's Chol HaMoed Pesach. It's the intermediate days of Passover. And so that'll also be acknowledged this week. And then
also the Yiska service Friday night.
And so we're also doing a Yisker service. So all of these three things are connected one way or another to Passover. And but I'm only officiating on the strict condition that there be chocolate covered matzah at the oneg, and we're having trouble negotiating that point, so I may be on strike. So
if you can't get it negotiated,
though.
I'll bring you some.
What did you say, Nan?
I said we do have macaroons for the oneg from the Seder. There was an entire box of them left over. So
Steve,
$3.
3 boxes.
Holy cow! And that includes giving some away. So, Dana, do you need gefilte fish?
I don't need it, but I would love it.
All right, I will bring a jar to the temple.
Wow.
For you.
Wow. Thank you, Nan. That is very sweet of you. I live on gefilte fish most of the year. That's my main food source.
Well, then you need to start stocking up at the holiday times when they have it.
That was the idea. My ancestors used to jump in the rivers and grab large gefilte fish.
Let's begin with the blessing, and then we can start discussing together. Baruch atah
Adonai
Eloheinu
melech haolam asher tishanu mitzvotav v'tanu l'sodot v'divrei Torah.
Blessed are you, Adonai,
Lord our God,
ruler
ruler of the world, who has sanctified us with your commandments and commanded us to engage in the words of Torah.
Okay, Rabbi, I'll let you start, and then we begin on page 129.
And here is the Tanakh. This is the New Jewish Publication Society translations. You see that says in the cover, the New JPS translation, which is from the 1980s. And we're in chapter 16, which is the beginning of Achrei Mot. So we're still in Leviticus. We're coming slowly toward the end of Leviticus. And Achrei Mot means after the death, which refers to the death of 2 of Aaron's sons. And it's the part that talks about the scapegoat. So I'll just read you a little bit of the, if you have chapter 16, verse Are
we in Leviticus?
5. And from the Israelite community he shall take 2 he-goats for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering. Aaron is to offer his own bull of sin offering to make expiation for himself and for his household. Aaron should take the 2 he-goats and let them stand before the Lord at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And he shall place lots upon the 2 goats, one marked for the Lord and the other marked for Azazel. Azazel can be translated as the devil, but they don't translate it like that here. They just leave it as Azazel. Aaron shall bring forward the goat designated by lot for the Lord, which he is to offer as a sin offering. while the goat designated by lot for Azazel shall be left standing alive before the Lord to make expiation with it and to send it off to the wilderness for Azazel. So we have
expiation?
here a very unusual ceremony where you send the goat off into the desert as expiation for sin. Marion,
Expiation means to send away.
I'm sorry.
What does expiation mean?
Expiation,
Expiation.
making up for sin. So you said something nasty about so and so. You're going to make up for it by giving the rabbi a lot of gefilte fish. So something expiation of sin is remediation, is fixing up.
Okay.
At least in part. This is just the ritual aspect. I mean, presumably you had to do other things, but this is the ritual aspect of it. Okay, so we're on page 129 at the bottom. And of course, this connects to Yom Kippur, but we're not on Yom Kippur. We're in the middle of Passover. And so it comes at a little bit of an inconvenient point. So it wouldn't be terrible if we connect any of these ideas to Passover, if we can do that. Natalie, can I ask you to turn on your camera?
She may have walked away from the computer.
I'll send her a message.
Natalie, can we ask you to turn on your camera, please? Okay, well.
I'll send her a message. I'll send her a text.
Okay. Okay, so those are just a few of the opening comments. It's a very obviously very ancient ritual, and it's something that it's first of all, we have to understand who Azazel is and what their role is in all of this. And then we have to figure out what do we want to make of this ceremony. I suggested to the board that this year that we go out to the desert with 2 goats and try to recreate the ceremony. Not everybody on the board was too enthusiastic about this. So I'm hoping that the Torah study group can lobby for this. Because if it's in the Bible, presumably it's an important ritual, or maybe not. Maybe we've evolved past it. But it does show how biblical religion and modern Judaism may be quite different. Okay, pointed comments or other opening statements. Yes, Steve.
Okay, why a goat rather than some other animal?
Well, goats were one of the traditional things that were used in sacrifices.
Okay.
So I don't think that it was necessarily that they, spent a lot of time thinking about it. It was just, what animals do you sacrifice? Well, there might be cows, there might be goats, there's a few other things, but in the desert, that's probably what they had. But maybe there's more symbolism to it than I realize.
Okay.
Yes.
Are the goats edible after being out there in the desert?
Well, if you roasted them as part of the sacrifice, but this second goat is going to be shipped out. He's going to be pushed out and sent off into the desert and then knocked off a cliff. So that goat will not. You wouldn't even recover the corpse, but no. But you could, sure. And in Jamaica, one of the most loved dishes is curry goat. So
Trying to look it up. This is why I've got my phone out, trying to see if there's a reason for it.
And
Haven't got found one.
Kind of a
I'm
wasted
scrolling
goat.
like crazy here. It
okay,
doesn't say definition of and blah, blah. Doesn't say why the goat.
Pam,
Can I ask a question somewhat involved? What does curried goat taste like?
well, it's good. It's got
chicken.
this Jamaican curry sauce, and then it's got goat meat. Goat meat tastes a little bit like lamb. I mean, I like lamb better, but Jamaicans eat what they can get. But it was definitely okay to eat, you know. I mean,
You
I'd
can
rather,
get it at some Thai restaurants and also at Indian restaurants. I've had it.
Hmm.
You can
Okay.
also buy it at some Middle Eastern markets. They have it in the freezer.
Right,
like
but you
to
don't know
read-
how to cook it.
who would like to read page 129 toward the bottom? Okay.
Where is it?
Yeah.
So,
Steve,
Rabbi,
we now have a new phone number also with no video. If you
That's
can make
Natalie.
me, if you
That's
can, make-
Natalie.
and now there's still that Natalie's is still no video.
I'll try to call her.
I'll read if you'd
Okay.
like.
Bottom of page 129.
Marcia, what did you find?
there's something to the effect where the goat is associated with the devil.
Oh,
And Lucifer, let's see, goat's symbol is used to depict the devil, yet scapegoat or sacrifice was used to atone for sin, thus helping people, and Lucifer was beautiful. Seems like goat's got a bad deal, it says here. It's got something
Goat's
to do
definitely got a
with
bad deal.
all right. Ready? Paracallus,
Oh,
seeking
here, wait.
meaning.
I found something. Historically, it was like the parable of the sheep and the goats. The sheep were those who do the work of mercy and are rewarded, and the goats are those who are not merciful and are condemned to hell.
Okay.
Never mind. Okay. All confusing. Okay.
Seeking meaning for the strange ritual of a scapegoat. Yom Kippur, or Day of Atonement, has been called the climax and crown of the Jewish religious year. Through 24 hours of fasting and prayer, Jews are challenged to review the ethical and spiritual standards by which they live and to reaffirm their commitment to carry out the mitzvot or commandments of their faith. In defining the message of Yom Kippur, Rabbi Bernard B. Bamberg writes that it speaks to each human being and seeks to bring each person into harmony with others and with God. The origins of Yom Kippur are shrouded in mystery. There are, however, some fascinating traditions associated with the sacred day that help us understand its popularity among the ancient Israelites. One of the most significant and baffling of these is the ceremony of the scapegoat. Do you want me to read the definition?
Yes, but hold up,
Okay.
stop there for a second.
Okay.
Okay. So we're backtracking a little bit here. In the Torah part I read, there's the ceremony of the scapegoat. Here they're putting in the context of Yom Kippur. So this is a ritual for Yom Kippur. So now we're going to look at the box, which talks about what is a scapegoat. Okay, so this is obviously a goat, but it's a goat that is used for a particular ritual purpose. And in popular terminology today, a scapegoat does no longer have to be a goat, right? So we all messed up, but we decided we'll all blame Marcia and make her the scapegoat for the event. That doesn't suggest that Marcia's a goat. it suggests that we're all going to blame her for something that everybody did, maybe even not her. And so the scapegoat has a life beyond religion. So,
The Jews are often scapegoats. If
right.
something goes wrong, the Jews did it.
And that's
The
ironic
Jews,
because we came up with the idea of blaming the goat for our sins, but we become blamed for other people's problems. Cyan and Marsha.
On
Marsha
page
wants to make it clear
130,
she's not the scapegoat. Yeah.
the second paragraph, I get a kick out of the politics that are involved here. What it says is Aaron is to take 2 he-goats from the Israelite community as a sin offering. After he has slaughtered a bull as a sin offering for himself and his household, he was to bring the 2 great he-goats to the entrance of the sanctuary. So it's interesting that he gets the food first. He gets the best food first, and left over for the rest is left over for the community.
Marsha.
Well, but what Cy is saying, that was true of the priests all the way along. They were always the recipients of the sacrifices. The
best.
word scapegoat, when I was looking for the reason they were using goats, it was a scapegoat, and then it got shortened to scapegoat. So that's why it's an oddball word, but it was a scapegoat.
Okay.
Okay.
Meaning that the goat escaped.
Yeah.
Okay. You, Marion, were you reading right? You can read the
Yes.
box. Defining scapegoat.
The term scapegoat was apparently coined by William Tyndale, the first great English Bible translator. Thereafter, it came to be used for a person, animal, or object to which the impurity or guilt of a community was formally transferred and then removed. In common usage today, a scapegoat is someone whom people blame for their own misfortunes. Yeah, for their faults and sins.
Wow.
As described in the Torah, Aaron is to take 2 he-goats from the Israelite community as a sin offering. After he has slaughtered a bull as a sin offering for himself and his household, he is to bring the 2 he-goats to the entrance of the sanctuary. There he is to cast lots upon the 2 he-goats, designating one for God and the other for Azazel. This one for God is to be slaughtered as a sin offering on the altar of the sanctuary. Aaron is then to place his hands upon the head of the transgressions of the Israelites upon it. Afterwards, the goat is sent off to wander and die in the wilderness. According to the Mishnah, the ritual of taking the scapegoat from the Jerusalem temple into the wilderness began as a very important ceremony, but later it became cause for great commotion, even embarrassment. People would stand along, point a finger at the goat marked for Azazel, upon which the high priest had confessed Israel's sins, and mockingly remark, "Such a tiny scapegoat for such a huge load of sins." As we may imagine, many interpreters have asked, what is the meaning of this strange ceremony? How does it relate to the religious significance of Yom Kippur?
Okay, you can stop there. So tell me about the ceremony in the Bible.
Who? So they had to take 2, take a
He-goats.
bull, I guess, and that was where am I?
That was for Aaron.
Expiation of Aaron's family sins. And having done that massive animal, then they took the goats and sent them off to the wilderness to carry off the sins of Israel, I guess it was.
Hmm.
That right?
I think so. I think that's what it said.
The one for God is to be slaughtered and placed on the altar, and then the one of the goats, I guess. Okay, and the one for Azazel has the Israelite sins on it, and it's sent into the wilderness.
Okay. And so why would you send it into the wilderness?
To die.
What does that
I-
accomplish? Because the whole
It-
concept of sacrifices is you sacrifice the animal in the temple.
So when
Sending-
the goat in the desert dies, hopefully the sins of the people die with it.
Yeah, what a weird,
Yeah,
It's unusual.
Mhm.
What is there the word in the Bible, the Hebrew word for those goats? Does it have any kind of strange etymology with that particular word?
which word,
Oh,
scapegoat?
for that goat, yeah. Goats, whatever, the two of them.
Not that I'm aware.
Okay.
Um, okay, comments, Si?
Can I assume that this temple that they're talking about, the sanctuary, was something that they had been living with, that they had built, and they had been in Israel for a long period of time? I mean, this is not something that they're doing in the desert. Am I correct on my sequence here?
They did it in the desert, possibly, at least that's what the Torah says. And
No,
then they continued doing it in the time of the temple in Jerusalem.
yeah, what I'm curious about is that having lived in Israel for a time, and they must have, if they talk about a sanctuary, which is a temple which they built, why suddenly do they come up with these new procedures, if you will?
I
You know, how does this come about? All of a sudden on a Tuesday, we decide to do this. And on Thursday, let's do this.
I-
Mhm.
I
Uh,
don't
Marcia, you
I
want to
think
respond to
I
Si?
think you're reading it wrong. I think they were doing it in the desert, and then when they got to the Jerusalem temple, it continued, but that's when they were talking about the people standing along the side and mocking it, etc. But I think is at first as described in the Torah. That happens, and then later on, when they were at the Jerusalem temple, this happened. I think all
They
these
were
things that
settled.
they made up along the way, it wasn't everything they did was an evolving situation in the religion. It wasn't that there wasn't anything before, anything they did was new anyway.
And that I understand, and I'm curious about the reasoning behind it. Why all of a sudden decide that we need another procedure, if you will, that we should be doing this?
Yes, there was a lot of sinning going on.
Marcia's funny. But yeah, they were concerned about fixing up problems. Like Bamberger said, Bamberger was a famous rabbi in Shara Tefillah in New York when I was a very little boy. And he's saying basically, what they're trying to do, whether it's in ancient times or modern times, is to put people back in sync with each other and with the world. So if you get out of sync in the world, I got in a fight in January with Pam, and in February with Nan, and in March with Minya, and in April with Steve. So by the time Yom Kippur rolls around, I'm fighting with everybody. And Torah studies become very tense. So
And you're in unemployment.
Yeah,
So this gives us a chance before the High Holy Days to do a reset. Now I'm trying to see what connections we can draw to Passover, because I think Passover as well could be seen as an opportunity to reset, right? Because if you do all the traditional stuff, which at this point probably none of us do, I shouldn't say that on tape, but if you did, you'd clean out your entire house and get every corner of the back shelves and find those breadcrumbs that dropped back there in 1979 and get them out finally and clean them. And then put everything back. And if it's chametz, you either sell it or give it away or eat it before Passover. And that Passover is like a new start. And then after Passover, you bring in new bagels and you don't have any of the breadcrumbs from the old bagels. So it's kind of like turning over a new leaf, a new life. And this too, except the poor goat who has to sacrifice his life. But now the paragraph here, which is very, I'm not sure what to make of it. I'm not sure how historical this is. According to the Mishnah, that paragraph,
Yeah.
the ritual of taking the scapegoat from the Jerusalem temple into the wilderness began as a very important ceremony, but later it became a source of great commotion, even embarrassment. So, it does show the sociological impact on religion, that even though at the time the Kohanim were saying this is what God wants, in reality, even things that are seemingly unnegotiable are negotiable. If people start losing respect for a given ritual and say, how can you put so many sins of an entire nation on one little goat? And they start laughing about it, there's a lot of pressure to re-envision a ritual, even a ritual which is supposedly from God and cannot be changed. The people in charge of it have a lot of pressure to do something, because if they don't do something and you lose the support of the people, you have potentially a big problem on your hands, right? They're saying that in Iran, only 20% of the people now support the Ayatollahs, and that in upper middle class neighborhoods, the Shiite mosques are empty because people have been so turned off to the Shiite extremism that, and the fact they're going around arresting girls who don't cover their hair and so forth, it's made the population very, very turned off. And, even when you have religious coercion, when you have a society where the religious figures run things and you have no choice, which would be great for me, if I could just boss everyone around and they would have to do what I say. But it might not be so great for me because eventually people become resentful. And, if they have to do it, you don't really have a religious community. You have a dictatorship, and you don't, people are smiling at you because they have to, but you have no idea what they're thinking. And what they're thinking probably becomes more and more hostile each month goes by. So it's a double-edged sword. It's good, but it's bad. So our system, we have to convince people to want to be part of religion. And that's really hard work. But I presumably think that everyone here wants to be here, because you don't have to be here. I can't force you to be here. You do it because you want to, presumably. Maybe there's other factors. But this whole thing about, and that in the times of the temple, in the late times of the temple, that the people started losing respect for this ritual is very, very interesting. Marcia.
Just last night, I came upon this availability of this short film. It's 6 minutes long, and it's called The Smallest Power, and it's on YouTube. And it's about the people doing small things to rebel against the Iranian government. It's an animated film. And as I said, it's like 6.5 minutes, I think, is the total film. And if you just go on YouTube, and it's The Smallest Power, it's called, or go look it up online, just go to Google it and you'll get 2 or 3 options of ways to watch it. And it's interesting. People are rebelling against the military, the police in Iran, and I just don't want to listen. And they're doing it in numbers, but non-violently, just quietly doing a rebellion. And it was interesting. So if you get a chance, and it had to do with this Iranian blowback, basically going on.
Okay, good. Other comments? Then back to you, Marion.
This is Ibn is Ezra. Commentator Ibn, is that how you say it? Ibn Ezra refers to the ritual of the scapegoat marked for Azazel as a mystery. He suggests that it may be connected with a pagan religious practice of offering to the goat demons, which were prohibited by the Torah. Such sacrifices may have been gifts to a god many believed ruled the wilderness and was a power for bringing evil into the world. Leviticus 17:7. The scapegoat was offered to protect people from the evil influences. If Ibn Ezra is correct, why would Jews have used a ritual that seems to mimic pagan practices forbidden by the laws of the Torah? Modern interpreter Baruch A. Levine explains that the ritual of the he-goat for Azazel was not considered a gift to a pagan god, nor was it seen as a pagan rite. Instead, the scapegoat marked for Azazel was a dramatic means through which the Jewish people rejected the influences and temptations of evil symbolized by Azazel.
Okay.
Levine,
Stop. This is a Cy Perlis moment. This is exactly what Cy is constantly, asking me about. What was the influence of the surrounding environment on the Israelites at the time? And here you see, apparently the Israelites adopted a very, very, very pagan practice. Now, they may have reinterpreted it at the beginning. Maybe they interpreted it after. We're not sure. But how did this practice get into Judaism? We see it doesn't really fit. It's completely different in terms of, we normally are accustomed to sacrificing animals. Here, you throw the animal out into the desert. And then it's clearly marked that this animal is for Azazel. Who is Azazel? Who in Azazel's name is Azazel? So we have a very bizarre situation here, but this seems to be a very, very clear indication that this is a really, really, really pagan ceremony, which has been somehow put into the Bible. Minya.
I think that Azazel was accepted as either a demon or an evil spirit because the world wasn't only filled with good. And if it was, then you wouldn't need a scapegoat for bad things or for sinful things. But I think that the representation or the symbol of this Azazel, when I looked it up, the pictures of him really look like what we would expect the devil to be. It had horns and this horrible face, and it represents, to me, when I read it, represents the evil that people do, because the whole world was not only good. So you needed to have a symbol of something bad.
Now in Hebrew, there's an expression, telech lazazel. If I say that to you, it basically means go to hell.
Oh,
Telech la'azazel, telchi la'azazel.
So that's a common expression in Israel?
Well, only if you're mad at somebody, yeah.
But it's still there.
Yeah, no, but it's not the devil, it's hell. But it's a general term for go away and don't ever come back. I hate you.
oh my goodness.
Well, that's what I said before,
Remember
it
that.
said that it was associated with the devil, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe Telech Lazazel, go to the devil
Right.
and go dance with the devil, right? What's that song they have from years ago that the fiddler and he bets the devil and who can play the band, the
Gold,
little-
that's
Devil in the
the
red dress,
country singer.
the devil in
It's
the
a
blue
country
dress.
singer.
Who is it?
but you
So-
can see in popular
Charlie Dan,
culture,
it's Charlie Daniels, and it's the devil
Right,
goes
Charlie.
down to Georgia, and he
Right.
plays that golden fiddle,
Yep.
and he wins.
Devil.
right?
Yeah,
Yes, so I was rabbi in Georgia for a long time, and we were constantly being offered the devil would compete, but none of our congregants could play the fiddle better than the devil. So we left it up to Charlie Daniels. But you can see in popular culture, there's a lot of references to this devil figure. In Judaism, there was such things, but over the past 200 years, it was kind of repressed because it was not considered civilized. It was not considered enlightened to have all these superstitious stories about the devil and about demons and Lilith and all these things like that. But Judaism had it certainly, and you can see it right here in the Bible. Azazel, Marsha.
Well, no, as to what we were talking about with Sai, they were carrying all this history with them of the previous cultures they lived in. They had to have been bringing it with them. I don't know, a lot of us, especially the women, had read The Red Tent years ago, and it was one of my favorite books. In that book, the women have kitchen gods that they carry with them, and they hide them in their on their, in their horses or camels, whatever camels, I guess. They put they in their packing because they're not supposed to have them. The men would have a fit if they saw these kitchen gods. So they're not going to give them up, but they're, you don't want to cross the kitchen gods because they could be trouble. And so that they hide them, but they could still have them, so it's you don't give up your superstitions that easily. The red
right.
brands on the baby carriages and the what is the when you do this to get away, chase away the devil, that all the little things you do.
Yeah. You never mention a disease out loud.
Right, yeah.
Other comments? Okay, Marion, back to you.
In transferring all the sins of the people to the scapegoat and then sending it out into the wilderness marked for Azazel, ancient Jews believed that they were forcing the iniquities of the people back on Azazel. In a way, Levine concludes, they created a boomerang effect, returning evil influence back to its point of departure, to the wilderness. In doing so, they demonstrated that only God had power in their lives and that they had defeated the symbol of evil, Azazel. Levine admits that this entire complex of rituals seems to be predicated on magical perceptions, that his interpretation is unacceptable to many modern students of the Bible, as it was to certain traditional schools.
All right, so Levine tries to come up with a nice Jewish rational explanation, and even he admits that it's forced, that nobody accepts it pretty much, that this needs to be entirely based on superstition and paganism, which is okay, right? So we don't object. We understand that ancient Israel was subject to influences from their surroundings in Canaan, and that a lot of things started out very superstitious, and that doesn't bother us at all. But it bothered Maimonides. My friend Maimonides is not going to accept that any of this has anything to do with these crazy, pagan ideas that this Azazel and the devil, and that's not. Maimonides wants a pure religion, and he wants it pure from the beginning. So he's going to reject everything, all the things that we are assuming is what actually happened. And he probably knows that this would actually happen, but he doesn't want to accept it, right? He's thinking about his audience, and these are some of his readers are simple people, and they're not going to be able to understand that something may have started out crazy, but it's been elevated through thousands of years of Judaic analysis. So he doesn't want to scare them off. So he's going to pretend at least to say it's never was like that. All right, Marion.
One of the commentators is Moses Maimonides, who rejects any identification of the scapegoat with powers of angels or of evil. He
Which
declares
is
it is
fairly ridiculous, right? So Maimonides is wrong. And I'm arguing that Maimonides knows he's wrong.
he's making an excuse, so they say. He declares it is not a sacrifice to Azazel, God forbid. Instead of being a ritual with magical powers, says Maimonides, the scapegoat ceremony is an active allegory meant to impress the mind of the sinner that his sins must lead him to a wasteland. When those who have broken the laws of Torah see that their sins are placed upon the he-goat and sent out into the wilderness, it is hoped that they will break with their sins, distance themselves from them, and turn back to God in sincere repentance, which people don't do that.
Well, but do you like his idea in theory, Pam?
But doesn't Maimonides want Judaism to evolve? Isn't that what he's?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, evolve into a more rational, enlightened, civilized. He doesn't want any
Sure.
connection with. But the problem that he has is that he can't. We want it to evolve and be rational and enlightened, but we want to accept the truth, and we can say that thousands of years ago they were, playing around with this idea of this devil Azazel that you had to send a goat to die. And that doesn't mean that our religion today can't be civilized. But Maimonides didn't see it that way. He thought we have to make the ancient Judaism civilized as well. Otherwise, so it has to evolve, but our understanding of the past has to be brought in line with our current understanding. So that's the difference. But Lila, we're doing the course now on the Gospels and Rabbinic Judaism. So I said to Lila Hauptman that you can learn a lot from the Gospels about Second Temple Judaism. So her response was, I don't care about Second Temple Judaism. I'm interested in a Judaism for today that I can practice as and think about as my religion right now. I'm not interested in what Judaism was 2,000 years ago, which I guess you have to have a certain historical interest to care about what was in the past. Maimonides is basically saying something similar. He's saying for many Jews living in the 12th century, to say that ancient Judaism or ancient Israelite religion 2,000 or 3,000 years earlier had all this pagan superstition in it would upset them and would potentially cause them even to convert to another religion. So if we want our religion today to be rational and logical, we want to present the ancient religion as the same way. So we want to change it, but we don't want to acknowledge that it was changed because people can't deal with change. Yes, Mary.
It seems to me that's like taking a pill or a medication that your doctor prescribed and might have side effects and not refusing to find out what the side effects are. I'm just going to do it. It's doing it without the background. It's doing something without the meat. It's eating
All right,
all
so-
around it.
I took those COVID shots and then my horn started growing in. I was caught completely off guard. Cy.
Um, I think, I think we're always faced with new ideas or these new religions. It goes on constantly. Every time you pick up a newspaper, there's a new group thinking different ways in how to live their life, so that we don't have to depend on how people thought 3,000 years ago. We can set up our own religion based on how we live our life today and the circumstances that we live in which we live our life. That shouldn't be something that should keep us from starting from scratch. And a lot of people do start from scratch in terms of how they should live their life. And I think a lot of the kids today, kids being college kids and so forth, are doing that to some extent.
Okay, good point. Anyone else? Nan, Steve? Okay, back to you, Marion.
Are we on the box on the top of 131? Function of the scapegoat.
Um, yes, the box.
Okay, the function of the scapegoat serves as an expression of the educational message of Yom Kippur. Every year, one is afforded the opportunity to determine one's life for better. Yes. To purify the heart for service according to the will of God. The holy day teaches us on our greatest gift, freedom of choice. I would like to say something about, was sending the goat into the desert like Tashlik, like throwing the breadcrumbs
Yeah,
into
Yeah.
the water.
right.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. And what's the connection?
It's going away. It's taking the sins. It's taking the hurrah out of your heart.
Same idea.
And same idea. And you're sending it this way. You're not killing anything, you hope, but it's being taken away.
Okay. So
Alright.
same concept, throwing something out, but instead of getting the goat who dies, you're just getting rid of the breadcrumbs that were already killed earlier.
Right.
Other responses to that? Do you think the Azazel ceremony and the Tashlich are essentially parallel?
I think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think so. Good idea.
Marcia?
Yeah. I mean,
And
it's
so-
serving the same purpose.
Exactly.
Did we do Tashlich this year? Yes.
So,
Didn't we do it in
Yes,
the
we did.
garden? The
Yes,
biblical garden, and
Yes.
we had a huge turnout. It worked out really well.
and
had two- We had two buckets
Swimming
filled
pools.
with water, and that's what we're planning to do again this coming high holiday.
And a couple years ago, we did it at Sunland. It was just
Sunland.
man, Faye, and me.
isn't it supposed to be running water?
Yeah, it's supposed to be running water, so the biblical garden, but Pam is building an underground river through the biblical
She's
garden
making
that's gonna
streams
go all
for
the
us.
way from Canada down to Argentina.
Yeah, she filled the
Road
buckets
canal.
though with running water from the hose, so
That sounds reasonable.
Yeah.
I could do something with a group of rocks. I could make running water if you wanted in the garden. That's
I
doable.
think Sentinel Alex will love that.
Oh,
That
we're
would
still
be-
we're still having problems, huh?
Well, we're coping with them.
Okay.
We have to coexist in the same neighborhood. But yeah, that would be nice. A garden we could with a running water with a little. We could find some. You have to find some biblical connection for it, Pam.
They sell little fountains like that you can get ready made. You can just hook it up and
Yeah,
water
but
it.
Pam can make a better one.
A lot of work for her.
We
You
want
put
it
a
to be
fountain there, though, it's one more piece of something for them to try to
Yeah,
vandalize or destroy.
Right.
Oh, don't worry, we have so many locks out there, no one's messing with it.
Yeah, but if the fountain is there, somebody could either put
need
graffiti
a-
on
we
it
need
or
a
take
port-
just destroy
We need
it.
a portable fountain that we can bring indoors for the rest of the year and only put it out. when touched.
That's a
So
lot of
what
work.
is this, what does
Well,
this goat represent? So we said, like in Tashlik, it represents our sins. So do you like breadcrumbs representing our sins? Give me a couple examples of our sins. What are we talking about here?
Being stiff-necked,
Are we
not,
talking about eating pork chops? Are we talking about lying to our best friend that we've canceled the
Isn't it-
weekend in Aspen and we're really going, but we don't want to tell her? Are we
Isn't it
talking
all those
about
things?
murder?
The whole thing,
Any of these things?
whole package.
All right,
I'll be back in a second.
okay. She's going to see if the goat is still there.
Standing at the door. Okay.
The goat has been listening to the conversation. He may take off any
So-
minute.
So I wonder with the goat, going back to Mr. Goat. So you looked him up, Minya, this ugly little face with and so with the horns, often the devil is pictured with horns, and so you goats have horns, and so maybe this is why the similarity of the whole thing, And
So the goat
they
and
have
the
funny
devil,
looking eyes too with the line,
the goat, it looks like a devil.
Yeah.
Or the devil is made to look like a goat. Maybe
That's
one of
true
the
because nobody's seen the devil, so.
Does a female goat have horns?
We assume so.
I think it's
So,
a male goat. They choose it. This has to be a male goat only. And I think the reason for that is the horns. All right, now Bravanel is going to give us a comparison between those two goats and two biblical personalities, right? Brothers, Marcia.
So wait, back to the goat. I'm kind of fixated here. So they oftentimes Jews are pictured with having horns. Is this got to do with the devil and etc.?
That's a good question. I'm not sure where the medieval conception.
Yeah, the medieval.
There's some excellent books on this. Joshua Trachtenberg, who was a Reformed rabbi in Easton, Pennsylvania in the 1940s. He wrote a couple books about the medieval perceptions of Jews and exactly this kind of subject. Okay, Marion, you want to read a Bravanel? We're on page 131, left-hand column, right below the box.
I'm going to have to leave. I've got company, unexpected this early, but I'm going to have to leave, and I will see you all next week. I'm sorry.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Joy.
Bye.
Okay, so we need a new reader. Bye, Marion.
I'll read.
Okay. Bye, Marcia.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Marianne. Abravanel
Bye.
also suggests a symbolic interpretation for the ritual of the scapegoat. He believes that the two he-goats, one marked for God, the other marked for Azazel, are to remind Jews of the twin brothers Esau and Jacob. Esau, like the he-goat marked for Azazel, wandered into the wilderness away from his people, its laws, and its traditions. Jacob, like the he-goat marked for God, lived a life devoted to God's service. According to Abravanel, when Aaron and the high priest after him cast lots to decide which of the two he-goats would be marked for God and for Azazel, Jews were to be reminded that they had a significant free choice to make. They could live like Jacob or Esau for God or for Azazel. Jacob or Esau, for God or Azazel. Okay. Do you want the lots thing? The box about lots?
Yeah, but hold on. So what do you think of this paragraph? So we're comparing them to who?
Esau and Jacob.
So Esau and Jacob were the brothers. Who was the good guy?
Jacob.
Okay. But who stole the birthright from who?
Thank you.
What did you say again?
Who stole the birthright?
Jacob.
So the good guy stole the birthright from the bad guy. But remember, when we talked about this, I don't know, months ago, it's not clear who's the good guy and who's the bad guy, right? You could have a lot of sympathy for poor Esau. He's a country bumpkin, okay, but he's manipulated by his mother. Oh, yes, Steve.
Well, I was gonna say the mother is the one that initiated the whole thing
And why did she do that?
because she felt that Jacob deserved it more so than Esau.
And why did she feel that way?
Because Jacob was more holy or felt more holy than Esau, just didn't do the things that he was supposed to do. He was the hunter, he was the adventurer. Jacob was more of a thoughtful,
Was a scholar. Or-
scholarish type guy.
But what's wrong with that?
In
People
those
are the
days,
way
I
they
don't
are.
know.
What's
In
wrong
those
with
days, I
her?
don't know.
What's wrong with her choosing that?
No, what's wrong with Asaph wanting to be a hunter, not a scholar? Or, the different children are different, right?
Well, maybe she felt the fact that, Jacob was going to, she surmised or envisioned him being the father of the Israelite people.
All right. Well, that's a later rabbinic idea, right? That's what the rabbis say, and that rabbis justify Rebecca's intervention and said she knew that Jacob would be the appropriate person to lead the Israelites, and that was really important for the future of the covenant. But I'm not convinced that that's justification at the time. I think that's looking backward, but that's just my opinion. But Steve's representing the rabbinic tradition here. Pam.
Just the fact that she created that much division between the sons. That,
Yeah.
created, problems going on and on, so she was not helpful.
That's my feeling.
Yeah.
But Pam and Steve are representing different viewpoints here.
Yeah.
Very distinct, different viewpoints. Steve is saying exactly what the rabbis said later. And Pam is saying what it appears to me to be at the time. So Rebecca, in retrospect, looks a lot better than she would have looked to her contemporaries. Rebecca used to go to Starbucks every Monday morning with 4 or 5 girlfriends, and after this happened, they wouldn't invite her anymore. But later, the rabbis venerated Rebecca. She saved Judaism in their view. So sometimes you do things that at the time look bad and later look good. But that's not that common. Usually, if it looks bad at the time, it looks even worse later. Minya, comment? Okay.
Ty's got his hand up.
Yeah, I have a
Okay.
comment. I think it's interesting that Steve feels that way. And when you look at the big picture, what Steve's saying is right, except for what happened recently. The position that the Jews have always taken was that of people of the book, people of the mind, so forth and so on, never getting involved in killing or any of that nature until out of necessity recently. And that changes the whole subject. So who are we now, Steve?
That-
Mhm.
that-
Yes.
That's,
Yes, Marcia.
I don't think that's true what you said. The Jews have been in wars years after years after
Yeah, but-
years. It's not just recently that this has happened.
Never aggressively and never to the point where they were trying to, I'm talking about recent history with the last 500 years, 1,000 years. They have always been in a negative position. Think about it, Marcia.
Well, maybe the occasion didn't come for them to fight until recently when they had to.
Oh, they didn't fight when they were in Russia. They didn't fight early in Germany. They didn't fight
They-
when they were in Turkey. They didn't fight when the Romans.
Oh, and they were in the minority and they would have been flattened, well, they didn't fight when they were in Germany, certainly, or most of them didn't,
Okay, so then there's two goats, and they have to decide which one is going to be for God and which one's going to be to Azazel. Now, from the goat's point of view, it doesn't make that much difference because one goat gets sacrificed now, the other one gets kicked out into the desert to die or to, so they both die and not in a most pleasant way. So it's not like one of them gets saved. But what other holidays do we have where we pick things or we cast lots or anything like that, or it's part of the story? There's a holiday I'm thinking of that's not Yom Kippur, which is connected to this.
I
Anybody?
remember the casting of the lots, but I can't remember, is it
Yeah, which holiday is that? It's actually the name of the holiday.
Shabbat, is it?
No? Minya? It's a holiday Nan? We recently celebrated. Steve?
We're bad.
Shirley, help me here.
Was it Purim?
I was just gonna say Purim.
Thank you,
Yeah,
thank you,
That's
thank
what
you.
I said was a Purim.
And Purim is named Purim after Purs, which were the things that were chosen to determine the date that Haman and his friends would murder all the Jews. Okay, so you have that, and you have it here, and then Samson Raphael Hirsch, the founder of modern Orthodoxy, is going to talk about its connection to Yom Kippur at the very bottom of 131 on the left side. Did we get a new reader? Marcia?
Yeah, okay. So the meaning of casting lots, we're up to that?
Yep.
Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch sees in the ceremony of deciding which goat will be for God and which for Azazel a symbol of the choice each Jew makes on Yom Kippur. We can decide for God, gathering together all the powers of resistance we have been given to resist everything that would tear us away from our vocation to be near to God. Or we can decide for Azazel and uphold unmastered our selfish life of desires and give ourselves over to the uncontrolled might of sensuality.
Oh my.
Hmm.
So
Rabbi-
what is this how people think of Yom Kippur?
I don't think you would think there's a choice. I never thought there was a choice.
Your parents forced you to do it and you just kept doing it. Anybody else? Pam, do you see this stark choice between
Yeah,
what is the choice here for
this comparison to me is a stretch.
to be near to God or give yourselves over to uncontrolled
Yeah,
might of sensuality?
yeah.
sex, drugs, and rock and roll kind of thing? So you can have God or sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
I'll play the fiddle with the devil in Georgia or something, whatever the story was.
Yes. Well, I did that for 10 years. Okay. Well, comments? It seems that I don't know that I see Yom Kippur in such a stark either or way. Okay.
I think most people consider it's a time of consideration, even if they don't make good, change their way of thinking or change or make reparations, etc., it's still a time of consideration, and that's what's important too.
Okay. Okay, Marcia, you can keep going.
Going. Rabbi Hillel Silverman calls attention to the fact that according to the Talmud, the two he-goats must be identical in size, appearance, and value. And this, he contends, is an important lesson. The two goats symbolize what we are willing to give for our own pleasure and enjoyment for Azazel, and what we are willing to give for the welfare and security of others for God. So you can't have a crummy goat to send out to the desert. They have to be just as good as each other. The Talmud insists, says Silverman, that the two goats be identical in size and appearance and value in order to teach the lesson that all we devote to personal pleasure and self-aggrandizement for Azazel goes into the wilderness unless we also sacrifice for the Lord and make atonement.
So this is suggesting that if we only worry about our own careers and our houses and we don't pay any attention to God, then in the end, all those material things are going to go up in smoke anyway.
Is that what it means?
Well, all right. Let me put that as a question mark. Does it mean that? Okay, you can keep going, Marcia.
In other words, the ancient ritual is not just about the scapegoat, but it is about what is done to both he-goats. One of them ends up as a sacred sacrifice for God, symbolizing our generosity to others and loyalty to God. The other, for Azazel, is sent off to wander and die in the wilderness, a sign that serving only our selfish pleasures and pride is a waste of our precious potentials. Mouthful. It is wasting them in the wilderness. The ritual for both he-goats on Yom Kippur is a reminder of the delicate balance between caring about oneself and about others that each person is challenged to achieve.
Okay. Do we have anything like this on Passover? That's a good
Yes,
question.
when you
Sam, Minya,
do you talk about the 4 questions, is that at all a consideration there?
explain.
Well, you know, what is our, well, I'm trying to remember the question. I didn't do the Passover thing. To consider what your intent is, you know, to do with your life, you know, whether you want to live it well or not. And I think we do that as we read through the Haggadah. There are readings that apply. And,
Okay,
and
Dan?
did you have something to say, Nan, that related to that? Oh, I saw your hand up.
Steve?
Well, we have certain sacrifices during Passover. We can't eat bread per se. We have certain rituals that we observe during the ceremony or during the Seder. And those are things that, you know, certain people will feel that they're sacrificing their lives to, you know, to observe these rituals.
But are these things sacrifices that we can't eat bread?
Good question. Good question. I don't know.
I mean, do you feel it's a sacrifice?
No, I don't personally, but I'm sure others do.
Surely you feel it's a sacrifice not to eat bread?
You have to unmute.
We can't hear you.
She's got to find it, the button.
Okay, I don't know if that's really a sacrifice. I think it's just more of a tradition. I mean, just because you just can't eat bread doesn't mean, you know, that you sacrifice anything, unless you're really, really a bread eater. Maybe it's good, but I'm not.
Yeah.
Right, I guess there are people for whom that would be, you know, it's a terrible week. But for most of us, matzah, bread, it's all the same thing, you know, more or less.
but that you actually have to do more than bread. I mean, it's anything made with hummus, with flour and yeast and all those things, not just bread. It's
So no
other baked
donuts.
goods and cereals and all kinds of other things.
All right.
And that might be a sacrifice if you couldn't eat all of those things that you really liked.
All right. Minya, Pam,
My father was a bread baker. So for me, there's not a comparison between matzah and bread.
but what is this? So is Passover equivalent to what they're talking about here? That there has to be a balance, and that there's good and evil, and the two have to be equal, and then all the things they're talking about with the two goats. Could you relate that to Passover as well as Yom Kippur? Or is this really only about Yom Kippur?
Well,
Yes, Steve.
if you're talking about sin, then I would refer only to Yom Kippur.
All right. So because sin is not really as relevant for Passover.
I don't see any sin in Passover per se.
Okay. Sai, any comments?
No.
Okay, Marcia, back to you.
While its origins are clouded in mystery, the ceremony of the two he-goats continued until the destruction of the temple in 70 CE. Interest in uncovering its meaning and connection to Yom Kippur, however, has not ceased. Was it a magical way of ridding the people of Israel of its sins? Was the scapegoat marked for Azazel actually sent out into the wilderness as a sacrifice to a demon of God or God of evil? Is the scapegoat ceremony a symbol of the various spiritual and ethical choices Jews must make on each Yom Kippur? Perhaps in the case of this ancient tradition of the scapegoat, we have an example where all the interpretations provided through the centuries may be correct.
Oh, Harvey, please,
Yeah,
no.
that was not right.
That last paragraph is so tacky.
It's like when you read a book and the author ties everything together in the last paragraph to solve the problem,
And insists that everyone is right.
Yeah,
He needed a last paragraph and he just threw that in.
right, exactly.
Valid point, valid point.
Clearly. But I think that the most provocative part of this is that there is an ancient pagan ceremony, completely pagan, where the ancient Israelites are paying homage to this evil god, this evil demon who comes straight out of the pagans, and they're practicing a pagan ritual of sending a goat out in the desert in order to placate this demon so that the demon won't hurt them. And I find that idea fascinating. It's just, what is this doing in the Bible? And not only is it in the Bible, but then they take it and make it into something for Yom Kippur. It's shocking. And it's very fascinating at the same time.
In a way, it's almost silly, and that business about when they built the temple of this goat running down the street, and they're all mocking the fact that it's a goat and carrying all the sins of the Israelites on the little goat. I think I know why one reason they used a goat. I mean, you couldn't put a bull down the street, you'd have havoc. You couldn't do a chicken. I mean, you gotta find some middle-sized animal that you can kind of move along down the street.
So there's a chicken used on Yom Kippur as well, where you do the kapara and you twirl it around your head.
Okay.
You've never heard of
Maybe at
that?
your house.
Is what she said. Yeah.
There's a lot of ancient, if you dig a little bit, not very deep, you find all these ancient paganistic rituals that are still in, not only are they in the Torah, they're still in Judaism. You can see why
Do these reflect over in any way? You would know probably more than we would into Christianity.
well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, look at this Azazel, the goat was sacrificed, was thrown out into the desert to die for the sins of people. And in Christianity, you have Jesus who dies on the cross for the sins of humanity.
So
So it seems that it's a parallel. Yeah.
I
oh,
think when eating, with not eating bread, that what the real sacrifice would be to somebody who eats a lot of things like waffles and pancakes and cereal and grits and all that stuff. They do all that stuff in 1 week, and if they, it's really a sacrifice for them to give all of that up. It's not just bread; but it's things made with the ingredients that are in bread.
right.
But I don't think that the purpose of the holiday is to force you to give up something you love. It's just, it might be a coincidence that the person who loves pancakes isn't, stuck. But I think the purpose is just to emphasize this idea of the rush to exit Egypt. And so therefore they just want everyone eating matzah and not eating bread to emphasize the Exodus.
I think. Excuse me.
Nan and then Marcia.
I mean, to me, I think it represents the connection to the Exodus so that we, in some small way, are feeling what the Israelites felt. As far as I'm concerned, I don't have the problem with eating matzah, giving up bread. But for Rich, I mean, he said, "Can I have cereal this morning?" I said, "Nope." He goes, "Really?" I mean, if I can get him 5 days into the holiday by doing this, and I don't make rice and I don't do pasta, things like that, which is a very big part of his diet. For him, it is a huge sacrifice. But he just had lunch and he had gefilte fish and matzah and horseradish, and he's okay. And I did make matzah brie this morning, so
There you
that
go.
sort of satisfied him. But there are only so many eggs you can eat. And he always says, I grew up hearing bacon and eggs are the most horrible breakfast you could possibly have. And I use turkey bacon now, so it's okay. But he says, how come you can eat an egg every day if I want to for breakfast? And it's, so for me, it's not that difficult. For Rich, it's a little more difficult. But I have macaroons, so he has cookies and he's
There you
happy.
go.
Sai, Minya, Marcia.
I think it's just for that week, it's the reminder that it's Passover and we remember what had happened at Passover. It's just in the back of our minds that it's Passover, and that's what the whole purpose is. And you get, if you're really stringent about it, this food, that food, the other food, but generally speaking, the whole eating thing is a reminder of where we are in the time of the holidays and what we should remember about it.
Well, and does Passover have its own demons?
Why did they put it in fields at this point, or in the parsha? Why did this parsha come up at this point in the calendar?
Because it's in Leviticus and that's where it comes up.
Oh, because it's in Leviticus at the time. Okay.
I mean, it's just random. It's not intended to coincide with Passover. But I thought since it did, we should try to discuss some Passover things, compare them to Yom Kippur. Passover and Yom Kippur may have more in common than we think. Like, we certainly don't associate one with the other, but maybe we should.
Good point.
Okay, final comments, anybody? Pam, Minya, Nan, Steve, Shirley, Cy?
Gotta go have my, gefilte fish and horseradish in a few minutes.
Me too.
Okay, well, I'll turn it back to Steve for the final blessing.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
let us conclude then and do it together. Baruch
Atah
atah
Adonai,
Bye.
Eloheinu melech
Eloheinu melech
haolam,
haolam,
asher
asher
natan
natan
Torah temet, v'chayei olam nata b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Blessed
Blessed
is
is
Adonai
Adonai
our
our
God,
God, ruler of the
ruler
universe,
of the universe,
who has
who
given
given
us
us
the
the
teaching of
teaching of
truth
truth,
and planting within us
planting
the
within us
eternal
the
life.
life.
Blessed is
Blessed is
Adonai,
Adonai,
giver of
giver
the
of the
Torah.
Torah. Amen, everyone.
Amen.
Amen.
Have a good weekend.
See you Friday night.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
Have a good
bye,
week.
everyone.
See you Friday.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye all.